Hello, CIS 1400. My name is Brandon Berskevich. I'll be your teacher for this term. You can call me Mr. B, Professor B. I'm not a doctor, so you don't really have to call me doctor. But I wanted to record this quick introductory video into the course, and for me, to let you know what the expectations are, how we'll be working with it, and all those other things. So maybe just quick background. Like I said, my name is Brandon Berskevich. I've been teaching math and computer science for 13 years. Teaching at College DuPage only the last 2 years, or 2 semesters I should say. Last year was my first. I've taught this class twice already, once in a 12-week format, once in a 16-week format, both on campus. This will actually be my first time teaching it in an online format, so I'm pretty excited about that. I currently also teach at Plainfield South High School. I started teaching math there, and then I worked my way into the programming courses where we just had one programming course in Java, and I've built the program up to now where I teach 5 programming classes a day. I currently teach Programming 1, Programming 2, which are all done in Python, which is what we're going to be working with here in this course. I also teach AP Computer Science A, we do that in Java, and I teach AP Computer Science Principles, which is kind of a mix of class. We talk about the impact of computer science in society, and then we do some programming second semester. So I've got a pretty diverse background. It's one of the reasons I like teaching programming, is because I can do a wide variety of things, and it's always exciting, very interesting to me, and we can always change the projects and the lessons and still get the same content out. We can always tailor the projects to the student. I really enjoy it, much more so than just teaching straight math that's been around for thousands of years. At least programming is still something that's evolving, and it really interests me that I can do it in so many different ways. A little bit about me personally. I'm 35 years old. I have a master's in information systems and technology. I do not have a doctorate, so again, don't call me doctor. But I live with my wife Amanda and our 2 kids, who you can see in the photo here. This is my daughter Chase and my son Bryce. We took a trip to Disney this summer, and we had a pool installed in our backyard, so we've had a pretty exciting summer here. I personally, if I'm going to relax, I like to fish and play video games when I'm not working or with my family. I really enjoy teaching this 1400 class. It's pretty interesting. The other classes I would really like to be able to teach are the Java courses and the Python courses, of course. Those would be a lot of fun too. So hopefully, if you're in the CIS field and not just looking to take this one class or anything like that, you can evolve and take those courses as well. I think you'll really like them. Okay? So that's a little bit about me. Let's get into a little bit about the class and what you're going to need to be successful for this class. So I'll go through those things and break them down little by little here, and show you some examples of what we're talking about. But realistically, what you're going to need is you're going to need some sort of word processing, so Microsoft Word or Google Docs. I like using Google Docs very much, so most of the stuff I give to you will be in a Google Doc format, so you can use it appropriately or convert to Word and upload it to me. You'll probably need a plain text editor like Notepad++ or just plain old Notepad if you're on a Windows machine, or TextEdit or Text Wrangler if you're using a Mac. We'll be drawing some flowcharts, so you'll need to have some sort of flowchart creator. Now, if you're doing this at College DuPage or any other satellite campuses, there's what is it called? Something like not Visual Studio, but there's a program on there that allows you to create flowcharts. I like using an online flowchart editor called Draw.io. It's a Google product. It has everything we need, and then you can do it from anywhere. You don't need to install anything. It integrates really, really well with Google Drive, so if you're a Google person, you'll see that things can save very, very easily. You'll need to download and install a Python interpreter. Python 3 is what we're going to use. I'm going to do many of my lessons in Python. I will show you a little bit of Java here and there as well if we get the opportunity. All of your labs and assignments that are programming related will be done in Python, so you will need to download that Python interpreter, and install Python 3 to your machine. It's simple to do. I'll kind of walk you through the basics here. It's free, it's safe, so you won't have any option or difficulties with that. Once you download Python 3, it comes with a development environment so that you can code and execute your code, and I'll show you what that looks like, and we may even use that for at least the first lecture. But eventually I'm going to swap over to another environment that I like to code in called an IDE, an Integrated Development Environment. I like to use PyCharm, but there are lots of other ones out there. You can use something like Visual Studio Code and use a Python plugin. You can use Eclipse with a Python plugin. You can use Atom. Any IDE that you like to use. If you've already got one picked out that you want to use, feel free to use it. I'm going to use PyCharm and tailor my lessons to that and try to work in the different configurations that I'll use there so that you can mimic what I do if you wish, but I'm going to show you how to get all that set up as well. And then the last thing we'll kind of look at is the syllabus and make sure you understand everything that's going on in there and how to navigate Blackboard and how I have things set up. Okay, so I'll be posting this on the on Blackboard as well, so you can review it. But let's get into what you're going to need to do in order to get yourself set up. So first thing, I don't think we need to really go over word processing or a plain text editor. Those should come pre-installed in your machine no matter what machine you're using. Whether it's a Windows machine or a Mac or a Linux-based machine, you'll have some sort of plain text editor. More than welcome to use it. If you want to download other ones, you're more than welcome to. Let's get into the flowchart creator. I like to use draw.io just to make sure we know what's going on. So I'm going to go draw.io real quick and show you what we're looking for. So it's an online flowchart maker. You have a couple different ways to save your diagrams. You can save them directly to the drive, to the device, or if you're an Office user, OneDrive. I usually use Google Drive. I'll probably use device for this particular tutorial. So I'll do that, and then if I create a new diagram, I can title it whatever I want. So we'll go with my test diagram. Oops, if I can spell it right again. Okay. And then realistically, just basic is what you're looking for. There's nothing crazy here. We'll just hit create. And then you'll get all sorts of different editors that you can use. And again, I'll go through how to do all this as we go. But usually what we're into is flowcharts and then all of the symbols that you might need. And this is really just a drag and drop editor. So you can drag, drop, and then you can start stacking things and connecting them appropriately pretty easily. So again, we'll go through this a little bit here, and we might do something like that, and then we'll put in some like input X, and you can always align the text and do different things with it so that it's working out appropriately. Why they've changed the default from it being position of center to bottom is beyond me in the program, but we would have to clean that up. And then we can save it and do different things with it. But I'm not here to get too far into that today, but you'll need to be able to use this and get it set up. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is how to set up Python, because you will need to make sure that you do that. What I'm looking for you to do is to get an IDE as well. This is an example of PyCharm here, but first, before you can get to this, you do need to download and install Python. So Python is a very simple installation. You're going to go python.org. All right. And once there, you will need to come over to the download section. And over here, it will recognize what type of machine you have, whether you're running with a Windows machine or a Mac or a Linux-based machine. It will understand what machine you have, and you can download the latest release of Python. Right now, it's Python 3.7.4. I have an earlier version of Python installed on my machine. It doesn't really matter what version you get as long as it's Python 3. So if it's 3.6 and you've got that already on your machine, that's fine. If it's 3.5, that's fine. 3.74 is the latest release. Feel free to download it and get it started. But as long as it's Python 3, it will work just fine. Now, in terms of the installation, if you click here, you will download the executable file needed to install, run that, and then you will likely be asked a couple configuration questions. Just keep the default configurations for the most part. The one thing that I would caution you is want you to do is make sure you add Python to the path. Not that we will be installing other libraries and things like this, but this should make things a little bit easier down the road when you're working with Python files. So I don't want to get too far into that and why we might want to do that, but it just makes for an easier setup and easier to work with down the road. Other than that, the rest of the configuration settings I'm sure you could figure out. You just kind of click OK, OK, and Next a few times. And if you have any issues, feel free to just bring that to my attention through an email or anything like that, and I can walk you through the installation a little bit further. But once you have Python set up, you will get, let's see if I can find it. Let's minimize that. You don't need to see that. You'll get in your applications folder, if you're working with a Mac, a folder called Python 3.7. If you're working with a Windows machine, then you'll get it in your Start menu, so your little Windows menu at the bottom left-hand corner. But either way, once it's there, you'll have a program called Idle, and you can open and run Idle. My computer's running a little slow. And you'll know if your setup is done correctly if you can type in a simple Python command like print hello world. And if you were to type it exactly the way that I have it here, print lowercase p and then parentheses, quotation marks, any kind of set of words or characters that you want, and the quotes with a set of parentheses, and hit return or enter, you should see it print to the console. And once you have that, now you know you have Python installed, and you can do all sorts of other things like for I in range of, say, 5, and I can print I. I know this may not make a whole lot of sense at this particular juncture, but all of this is part of the Python language that we're going to learn as we go through the course. But at least you know it's set up correctly, and you can go through it. Okay, so I'm going to close that. Now, the last thing we're going to want to make sure that we do is set up an IDE. An IDE is just a development environment. You saw me typing some script over there in the idle window. Not the best place to do code as far as I'm concerned. I prefer using an IDE, something like PyCharm. And so oftentimes what I'll do is if I'm setting it up, just Google PyCharm. It's produced by a company called JetBrains. Those are the developers. And I just come over to the download window, or sorry, link. And I'm just looking for the free version, the community version. So once you download that and again set it up, go through the install, you should have PyCharm set up, and it's a project-based editor. It's really simple to use. I'll be using it again probably closer towards like Module 2. You can download the professional one, but it is not free. You will get a free trial, and there's nothing in there that we will use in this course. If you do need support for HTML, JavaScript, and databasing like SQL support, SQL support, that's fine. You can get it if you know you're going that route, but to be perfectly honest with you, the community version is more than enough and will be plenty for this particular course. I would wait to download the professional version until you figure out that you need it for whatever reason. And again, you can download it for whatever operating system you need. So for me, I need it for Mac OS. For you, you might need it for Windows or Linux. So feel free to grab, run through the installation. Again, fairly simple process, and make sure you download Python first from python.org. That way the configuration of PyCharm is done much easier. It'll automatically configure it to Python for you. So outside of that, it's pretty simple setup for the course. Now let's just get into the nitty-gritty of the documents, the syllabus, and what you need to do. So you're going to earn 4 credit hours for this class in an online format. It's set up in a series of modules. You can go through the modules as quickly as you want, given that they're available to you. We'll get into that in a little bit. But realistically, what you're going to be doing here is you're going to be learning the basics of programming, and we're going to go through that from A to Z. So you'll start with some basics of how computers work, how the internet works, how the hardware in your machine works, like what all that is going through. You'll go through some input, processing, output charts, some UML diagrams. We'll get into flowcharts and pseudocode, and then taking that logic and actually coding it so that you can see it working and having it in action for yourself. Later on through the course, we'll get into some more complicated concepts like object-oriented design rather than just sequential programming. We'll actually be building physical, tangible things for the computer to be worked with, to hold on to their own data, to have their own behaviors, and so on and so forth. And then as we kind of wrap things up, we'll get into some searching and sorting algorithms, data structure work, file processing, and eventually some event-driven programming, where you'll actually create your own window on the screen and be able to have buttons and text fields and labels and all sorts of stuff where you can click it and it will actually do something for you instead of having all of your programs run on the console. So it's a long road. There are lots of things to do, but it's a pretty efficient process, and I think you'll find it that it works together fairly well. As far as what you need getting into this class, you need to have a certain math background to you. Realistically, we need a solid kind of Algebra 2 kind of background where you have to have some solid algebra skills. Not saying the math we do in here is all that complicated, but there are some formulas that you may need to know, some things that you may need to be able to process and work with, so making sure that you have these prerequisites taken care of, the math 0482 or a math 1115, all with a C or better. Hopefully, if you don't have those, you've got the placement test, and again, if you don't have that, you can always ask for consent from me to get into the course, but if you're already here, you're already in the course, so it's not a big deal. And I would grant it if you have the right math skills. The course objectives and the topical outline, again, I'm going to let you just read that. You don't necessarily need me to talk about all of that stuff, even though we're going to talk about all these things throughout the class, and I've already discussed some of it with you. So feel free to browse that really quickly. As far as the materials of the course, you do need to have this textbook. Okay, you will be reading out of it. The Starting Out with Programming, Logic, and Design by Tony Gaddis. You can look it up. You'll find it on the College DuPage bookstore. Make sure you get that. It doesn't matter if it's a new copy or used copy. A previous edition will work if you can find one. I wouldn't go too far back. Maybe the 3rd or 4th edition rather than the 5th edition will work. Just to make sure that you have the context and everything in it. The 5th edition's nice because it does do a lot of the content and then develops it in several different programming languages so that you can see how this is working in, say, Java or C or Python, rather than just Python, which I'm going to demonstrate, and the previous versions don't do that as well as the 5th edition here. For flowcharts, like I said, you can use draw.io or whatever flowchart creator you want to work with. Labs and projects, you'll need an IDE or just Python installed so that we can go through that, plus any kind of word processor like Google Docs or Microsoft Word to help you get those flowcharts down. Grading's pretty straightforward. I've got the course broken down into a series of modules, which we're going to go through very quickly, or shortly, I should say. Across those modules, there are different assignments, projects, and assessments, and each one has a certain point value. There will be 400 points developed towards assignments alone. Those will be different worksheets that you will do and mostly lab activities that you'll do for programming assignments, things like that. There are 2 projects, both worth 150 points each, so something you'll want to make sure that you take care of, each one of which you will get plenty of time to do, from 1 week to even 3 weeks to accomplish, to do them all in due time and over as a process. Assessments, there are several quizzes involved, so no one big test, nothing that's 100 points or anything like that. There's no midterm or final, it just kind of gradually goes and builds. So across that you'll have several quizzes that you'll have to take that anywhere range from, say, 30 to 60 points. But we'll get into all that, and it all amounts to 1,000 points in the semester. And then the letter grade that you get will be based on those points. So as long as you earn a minimum of 900 points, you have an A, a minimum of 800 points, a B, and so on and so forth. Right? Past the grading, we'll get into work submission. Work submission is something that you need to be very strict on and hard on yourself with. All assignments, all assessments, being in an online format, will have very specific due dates. If you miss a due date, you will not get credit for the assignment or the assessment, whatever it may be that you missed. If you miss a project, you will not get credit for the project. Everything has to be done by 11:59 p.m. on the date that it's due. Okay? There are some extenuating circumstances, but if there are any issues with a due date, they need to be brought to my attention via email or whatever prior to that due date. I do not want to see something come up in my email saying, hey, I'm sorry I missed that due date yesterday. Can I still turn it in? I had something that popped up. Well, the answer is going to be no, because you should have started this project or brought something to my attention prior to that and been able to get something submitted. Obviously, there are some exceptions to this rule. I don't want to get into those exceptions here, but we will take those on a case-by-case basis, and that will be something personal between you and me. So make sure you hit the due dates. That's basically it. You'll have the opportunity to work on things with plenty of time, so make sure you hit those due dates. As far as submission types, each assignment will have different things that you'll have to submit. Some of them might be a Google Doc or a PDF or a Word document with a worksheet. They might be a PDF with a flowchart on it in pseudocode. It might be a Python file that I can execute. So you'll need to make sure that you submit assignments and projects of the proper file types that I request within a given assignment, so you'll know exactly what I'm looking for. Also, make sure that you save the files in the format that I specify in the assignment. So if I want something where it says like lab01 underscore your initials .py for a Python file, make sure I get it, the assignment name, in that format. It just makes it a little bit easier for me to grade, a little bit easier for me to work with. So I'm going to ask that you give me those. If I fail to get things done on time or submit things properly, they will not be counted. So please, again, adhere to those. If you turn stuff in early, give me a few days. I have absolutely no problem looking something over and saying, hey, this is where you can fix it, and then give you the opportunity to resubmit. As long as that resubmission is still done prior to the due date, I don't have an issue with that. So if you want to work ahead or try to get things done quickly and let me look at it so that you can maximize your point possibilities, I would highly suggest doing that. Obviously, if you turn something into me the day before it's due, I may not get a chance to look at it. So you're just going to have to go with it. But if you give me a couple of days, I should be able to look at it, give you some feedback, and allow you to change whatever needs to be changed prior to the due date. And then you can resubmit from there. Okay. Academic honesty, basically, make sure your work is your own. If I suspect that it is not your own, if it's just a little too close to something else, I'll bring it to your attention, have some sort of conversation with you, whether that be via email or webcam or something like that. We'll do that, but if it's an egregious copy of somebody else's work, I will have to take it up the chain of command and make sure that it's handled appropriately. As far as withdrawals go, make sure you're focused in on the academic calendar for when the withdrawal dates are for any class. You can go to how to register for all that kind of stuff through My Access, and feel free to contact the Student Services Center for any dates that you may be questioning. Administrative withdrawal, there will be a couple opportunities for me during the course to see how often you've logged in, how many modules you've assessed, so on and so forth. And if I find that you're just not participating in the class effectively enough up until a given date, I can drop you from the course and hopefully refund you some of your money, because there's no sense in you staying in a course that you're obviously not going to pass because you're not attending appropriately. So let's just make sure we're attending appropriately and we shouldn't have any issue. Now into those modules. Here's what you're going to be doing and when you're going to be doing it. So right now, Module 0 is what we're working on. I'm giving you my introduction to myself and to the course. You will also give me an introduction as well and submit something of the like. Now you can record a video saying, hey, this is me and this is what I do and this is why I took the class, or if you want to just make a discussion post, you absolutely can do that as well. I'll open up a thread for that. So that'll be sort of your first assignment. That assignment anticipated to start on September 8th, but it can be done anytime sooner. From this date forward, you need to have it done by the 13th. If you miss the introduction by the 13th, you will not get credit for that assignment. I would like to hear about you, who you are, because I won't get that opportunity to do it in class. So it would be very nice to at least put a face to the name. So if you could give me an introduction that is a video, that would be fantastic. If not, a blog post or a quick document, along with a picture if possible, to see who you are and what that's all about. So Once we get past those introductions and the course actually opens up on the 8th, you do have your first module to get into. You'll be doing a reading from Chapter 1, Intro to Computers and Programming. You have an assignment that will go along with that, and I will introduce that assignment in the module itself, and then there will be a quiz and assessment that goes along with that. The assignments due September 15th. The assessment is always due the next day, so I believe that's a Sunday-Monday combo if memory serves me right. Let me look that up real quick. September, yes, 15th is a Sunday, 16th is a Monday. So I'll do it where you have the weekend to work on your assignments, and then you have to make sure that you take the quiz by the 16th, that Monday. Odds are you're probably going to submit the assignment and take the quiz on the same day. They'll be available to you. Then we'll get into Module 2, which is Chapter 2. Again, assignment anticipated start date is the latest day I will have the module available to you. It will likely be done earlier than September 15th, so you can start it anytime it's available. But I will make sure that it is available on the 15th at the very least. And if it's not, please email me, because it may just be something where I have to unhide the folder so that you can view it. Again, assignment due dates and assessment due dates. And then you kind of work your way through Chapter 3 for Module 3, Chapters 4 and 5 for Module 4. And then Module 5 is no chapter to read, but it's an actual project. So that project opens up, you'll notice, the same time as Modules 4 and 5 because it correlates with all of this work that leads up to it. So you'll have essentially 2 weeks to work on it, but you'll have 1 full week to work on this assignment and then another full week to work on the module's project itself. So it opens up on the 29th, but essentially you have 2 weeks to do that particular project, although half of that week is spent doing Module 4. Then we work into Module 6, which is Chapter 6, 7, and 12, which deals basically with functions and strings, so text processing, functions, and things of the like. Another week for that module. Then you'll have, actually 2 weeks for that module because it's a rather large module. Then you'll have arrays for Module 7. We get into object-oriented design for Module 8. Then we get into files, and then you'll have this bank account project to work on. So there's a lot going on there. This particular bank account project opens up November 3rd, the same time that you start doing Chapter 14. So it kind of covers 2 modules there. So you'll need plenty of time to work on that. That's a rather large and encompassing project. Then we wrap out the semester with searching and sorting algorithms and event-driven programming, and then we are done. So like I said, you have to adhere by all of these due dates very, very closely. I need to adhere to all of the anticipated start dates and make sure your modules are ready by then. Like I said in the intro here, this is my first time doing this in an online format, so I am still in the process of creating videos and adapting my materials to kind of fit this format. I'm used to being in front of the room, lecturing, talking to you, and getting feedback from you immediately. So this is a little different for me, but I'm excited about the challenge and the change. I'm really excited to be able to do this from my home and not have to travel out to Glen Ellen every day because I live in Lockport. But this will be interesting. It should be fun. I will promise to adhere to these dates where your modules will open up, as long as you can promise me to adhere by these dates in which the modules will end. So that about wraps it up. If you have any questions with anything that I've discussed here, please feel free to open it up to me. I'll open it up a discussion forum for Module 0, and you can post any questions you want in there, and that way they're available to view by everyone in the course, and my answer is available to view by everyone in the course as well. And in that Module 0, you'll see another discussion forum for the introduction that you will need to make. Please make that introduction by the 13th. Whether it's in text format or video format, it doesn't really matter to me, just as long as there's something there that introduces me to who you are, what you do, what you like to do, why you're in the class, so we can get a feel for who we are in this course, because we won't have that face-to-face contact. All right, well, that's it for me. Again, if you have any questions, please post them in the discussion thread, and we'll get started with Module 1 very, very shortly. So be on the lookout for that. I will post an announcement as soon as it's ready, and have fun with the course. Thanks.